Hey, welcome. I want to give you just a brief video here on some of the things that we've talked about and we're going to do, okay? As you know, we've just finished cells here, really, okay? And with cells, we had cell division, and here are the different stages of mitosis that are here, okay? And you had that. So what we're going to be moving into next will be genetics, all right? So when we look at cells and we look at the models of mitosis, we see these chromosomes. The big deal inside of them is really DNA, because DNA has your genes, okay? So that's the next thing that we're working on. Now what makes genetics kind of really, it's like, wow, I never would have thought it, is what makes you, you, and what makes a giraffe different from a bear, different from a duck, okay? Or an iguana, or a chicken, is your DNA. And whenever we talk about DNA, you will do something kind of like this. The double helix, I know that you know how to do that. And if I say add a little bit more detail, we may start talking about A, T, C, G's, G, C, and it goes on and on, okay? And that's a sequence of nucleotides. Each one of these is a nucleotide. If you refresh back to the first part when we did chemistry and molecules, okay? So what's really weird is a sequence of these 4 bases turns into a frog or a chicken or any number of these things, all right? Now, here's something that is most important to know. I'm going to have a narrated slideshow on genetics, so therefore I don't have to do that here. But here's one of the most important things to know on planet Earth. DNA, which is a sequence of this, allows you to form another molecule called RNA, all right? And once you get RNA, you are able to, drum roll, make proteins, and proteins rock the boat. They do everything for us in life. So if you had an inability to make proteins, fancy word translation, then DNA wouldn't mean much. So you could have all the instructions. So an example is, you could have instructions to build a building, but if you don't have the builders to do it, then what would it mean? This, by the way, is called the Central Dogma, and sometimes the Central Dogma of biology or molecular biology, and it's one of the most important things to know. And as they say, the devil is in the detail. So when you look at what a gene is a special piece of DNA that allows you to form a special piece of this, that allows you to form a special protein, and proteins do just a whole long list of things. What is kind of sometimes hard to believe is that how you think and how your brain operates, ideas that you have, if you have fears and all that, really goes to, if we want to understand it, to what's happening with the DNA in this process right here. And of course, different diseases. So we see here, understanding human DNA, this is a chromosome, and it breaks it down to the nucleotide. So what's really good about this here, we have atoms and molecules, and we go right on up to gross organisms. And again, this was a chart that just talked about mitosis. Mitosis is really important because it's how a cell, even Stevens, partitions its DNA, how it replicates it and it partitions it. In mitosis, you start with one cell and you want to get 2 cells that are just like that cell. So since the DNA has the instructions, you have to make sure that you replicate all the instructions properly and they are distributed to the new daughter cells. As occurs with mitosis, you start with one cell, and it goes through the different phases that you run, prometa, anatella, and you end up with 2 cells that can now make it on their own. And notice the cell is half the size of the original cell. And from the cell talk, you know that cells have a surface area to volume ratio, and that controls why they only grow to a certain cell size. So therefore, if you looked at these guys like here, they all have cells within the same general size, and it's due to surface area to volume ratio. Now here's a friend here that you can't see, okay? But what happens is if you can find some dinosaur tissue that's been preserved in ice perhaps, you can get some of its DNA. And if you get the DNA, what's interesting is you can take DNA from one species, put it in another system, and you can have this process to roll forward and get proteins. So it's a potential to perhaps recapture organisms that are gone, okay? And that gets into things that I will post some resources. So anyway, I didn't want to give you a full-blown talk, but just an introduction, because I will have a narrated PowerPoint on genetics and resources, many resources. So just enjoy them and you'll do great, okay? Bye.